Welcome to Guitars and Music. I hope you'll consider subscribing. I hope you'll consider watching some of my original songs in my new playlist, Original Song Thursday. Every Thursday at 3, I upload an original song with some kind of a video that hopefully goes along with the song. I've recorded a lot of songs over the years, and that playlist is I've decided it's an important thing I'm doing musically right now, and I hope you'll consider watching. My channel's not monetized in any way, so you can just go to that playlist, hit play, and play it. I think there's 17 or 18 songs on there now, and I'm going to upload one every Thursday at 3 for a while to come, because I've got quite a few songs. But I wanted to talk a little bit today about guitar teaching, and I guess to talk about guitar teaching, we also need to talk about being students of guitar, because all of us are also students of guitar. No matter, the best guitar players in the world were all students of the guitar. So I wanted to say a little bit about guitar teaching. I used to teach guitar. I've taught guitar most of my life. I actually don't have any students the last few years. I got so busy that I kind of let the last few I had slide and haven't taken any more. But I did at one point have, I think, 35 or 40 students. That would be quite a few years ago. But and I always enjoyed teaching. And obviously, I think teaching's important. But I think teaching takes different forms. So I look at my life as a guitar player, and I'm just reflecting on some of the things I've learned about learning the guitar, which I guess would go to teaching the guitar. And there aren't all that many advantages to getting older, but one of them is you can kind of look back on things, and sometimes you can see things that you maybe wouldn't have seen when you were younger. And I think that's true about my life in music. I definitely see things that, looking back on my life, that makes more sense to me now. And one of them is the littlest thing can that you don't even think about, that you don't even notice, can years later you realize how important it was. I always think of the parable that Christ taught of the sowers and the seeds. So you sow seeds, and some grow, some don't. I think that's a good lesson in music. And I always think of this one young girl. When I was in high school, we were about 17 or 18, and my friend and I, we played a lot of guitar, and we also ran around town a lot, and, like 17 or 18-year-old guys do. But he had a little sister. She was about 14. Classic, kind of pesky little sister. I always, she was really nice, but she, kind of always bothering her big brother, and her big brother was always trying to shoo her off. But we used to play guitar. My friend and I would play, and she would always come around, and she was actually very talented. And one day she said, "Show me how to play the guitar." So I tuned her guitar. She had kind of an old guitar. I tuned it. I showed her how to tune it. And then I showed her a G chord. And that was it. I think that experience was about 10 minutes. I showed her a G chord, and I just remember right after that, for the next few weeks, she had a beautiful voice, and you would hear her sing that old Olivia Newton-John song. Of course, this was in the 70s, and she'd sing with that G chord, and she'd get that G chord, and it sounded really good. And she'd sing, "Wherever you go, wherever you may," and she never could make that change to the C chord, so she'd go, "Wherever you go," and it sounded like a country star, but she couldn't make the change. And my friend would sometimes, kind of tease her a little bit, good-naturedly, like an older brother, but she never could make the change to the C chord. So she'd say, "Wherever you go, wherever you may," and then she couldn't quite get there. And if we've all had that experience learning. Well, I never thought anything about it, but I just always remembered her singing, "Wherever you go, wherever you may," and not being able to make that change. Well, years later, I was in my 40s, my friend called and said he was around, and they were going to be in the area for like a family picnic or something. So I said, great, I'll come by. So I went over. They had like a little trailer and a campsite for, they were camping. And his mom was there, and I hadn't seen her in a long time. But this person that had once been this kind of tag along little sister now was a grown woman. And when she saw me, she said, "You're the man who taught me guitar." And she was excellent. She was an excellent guitarist. She'd been performing all over her area, and wherever she lived, she'd performed. She was a music teacher. She wrote all these really beautiful songs. And the first thing she said to me was, "There's the man that taught me guitar." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "I taught her that G chord." And like I said, I don't think that was 10 minutes. 10 minutes. And I never saw her again. My friend and I kind of drifted apart after that. You know, like you do when you're 18, we moved to different parts of the country and everything. I hadn't even thought about it. And she said, "There's the man who taught me guitar." And I realized that little G chord I showed her was the start of her becoming a polished adult folk guitarist, and boy, she had a beautiful voice. So she'd apparently, after the last time I saw her, she learned how to play a C chord and a D chord, and she had written all these beautiful songs, and she had a great voice. But it was kind of funny that she credited me. I take zero credit, but she credited me for having taught her the guitar when really all I showed her is a G chord. And I thought that was kind of an interesting lesson because she didn't have after school lessons. She wasn't some sort of a parental regular after school extracurricular activity type thing. I had just sat down at the kitchen table and showed her that G chord. And to her, I didn't really realize it at the time, but to her, that was a kind of major moment in her life playing music. And she took that G chord and the beginning of that old Olivia Newton-John song, that kind of country Olivia Newton-John song, and she took that. And over the years, after I never saw her again, she turned into a really good guitar player. And it was that one little G chord I had showed her. I'm taking no credit, but I think it's an interesting kind of lesson. And in my life, I have experiences like that. I remember, you've seen me play that harmony. If you watch his channel, I have that old harmony guitar, which is a lot like the one I learned on. But I took that to summer camp when I first was learning to play the guitar. I think this would be when I was in 7th grade and going into 8th grade. And the camp counselor there, and I could play a little bit. I actually could play some John Denver and everything, but mostly just kind of like strum along. But this camp counselor was actually a pretty good guitar player. He was sort of it was a church camp, and he was the guy that kind of played, for campfires, and we did Pass It On, and I don't know, Kumbaya, whatever you sing at church summer camp. But it was those are great memories, by the way. But one day in that week that I was at this summer camp, he showed me Time in a Bottle with that little walk up, do 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 do, and he showed me that. I bet that took him. I bet he showed me that for 5 minutes. I said, "How do you do that?" He was playing these Jim Croce songs, and he showed me that, and I couldn't do it. But he kind of showed me where to put my fingers. And when I went home, I kept working on it, and not only did I end up learning Time in a Bottle, but that was kind of a really breakthrough song for me. Now that guy, I've never seen him again. I remember his name, I won't say it, but I've never seen him again since then. So I have no way of contacting the guy or anything. But that was a breakthrough song for me, where I was playing in D minor. I was doing those kind of little walk-up, 2-string harmony walk-ups that Time in a Bottle has. And it was a really breakthrough moment. So that was another in my life. That was, and again, that wasn't after school lessons or anything like that, which I like after school lessons. But that was just a 5-minute little lesson from a guy. But to me, it was, I look back on it now, all these years later, and that was, 45 years ago. But I look at it all these years later, and I realize that was a really big deal for me to have someone sit down and show me Time in a Bottle. And of course, it wasn't just the song Time in a Bottle. It was the whole, finger picking, kind of being more selective with the notes you play, playing songs that were a little more constructed than some of the things I'd been playing, and really major moment for me. So I that was kind of to me what I guess I was to that little sister of my friends. I showed her a G chord. 40 years later, she credited me with having taught her the guitar and getting her started in music. And I feel like that for me, that was that summer camp moment. This guy had showed me Time in a Bottle, and it really not there. You know, it wasn't like I mastered this lesson like while he was sitting there, but he kind of showed me how to do it. And he just walked away from it. I almost feel like I can guarantee he doesn't even remember that. But to me, it was a major moment. And I think that's a good lesson in your life. You just show someone something, or, you know, they kind of, you take a little time with them, and you never know what will come of that. And I think that's probably true in a lot of things. You know, I always think of one of my boyhood heroes, Al Kaline. He said that Ted Williams one time took like 2 minutes when he was first starting out. He was and showed him a little bit about hitting a curveball or something like that. And it said it changed his life. Ted Williams just kind of walked away, but Ted Williams gave him a few tips on hitting a curveball, and 2 minutes, and, you know, it was the best batting lesson he ever had, he said, you know. And so sometimes it's those little moments in our lives when someone takes the time and that really knows how to do it and shows us what to do. It makes a big difference. And so looking back at my life, I think that's such an important lesson. It's those little moments, I think, that have made me develop. The other thing I think is when you know, it's an evolution. Like I mentioned, Time in a Bottle. Well, this guy showed me Time in a Bottle, and I couldn't play Time in a Bottle. You know, I think it was several months before I even came close to kind of walking up with my fingers. Today it seems easy to me, but that was an evolution. And so sometimes, you know, I always say don't try to force things. And I think our academic system tries to force people. Like, you know, we give people content to learn on Monday, and then Friday we give them a quiz, and if they don't know it, they flunk or something. You know, we expect them to master all this. And some of these things are life skills. You know, I think there are levels of you know, experience and everything that we have to take into consideration and everything. But we learn gradually. It's kind of an analog process. I just was thinking about how long it took me to play an F chord. I couldn't play an F chord at all at first. And then, you know, I think, you know, within a year of getting that old guitar, I had learned to play F chord, but I used to use 2 fingers up there, and then I would use all 4 fingers to play the F chord. And so that was my natural way of playing an F chord, because I never could get it where you would just play it with, you know, the 2 strings with 1 finger. And I remember very specifically, I think it was my junior year, because I remember where I was. One day I just played an F chord, and when I first tried to learn an F chord, I tried and tried and tried, and I couldn't do it, you know. And then I came up with this kind of you know, makeshift way of playing an F chord, and I actually played for years with that version of an F chord where I used all 4 fingers. I played nice and clean. I played well. I bet most people couldn't have told the difference. But one day in my junior year of high school, I didn't even try. Suddenly my hands just went into the way that F chord is normally played. And it was a major moment, and I remember that. And I also play E major with 2 fingers instead of 3, and I play A major with 2 fingers instead of 3. And that was right around the same time where I realized you can play 2 strings with 1 finger. But maybe my body was a little bigger. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But I specifically remember that when something that had seemed so hard to me, if not impossible, suddenly was easy. And I think that's a lesson, you know, stuff. You ever heard people like professionals make it look easy? Like you see these baseball players, they make outrageous plays and they make it look easy, like anybody, you know, and oh, it's not easy, but like when you really learn something, all of a sudden it seems easy, this stuff that might have once seemed hard to you. I remember when I first started to play, I had a guitar book and my parents gave me, and it had the first song I ever learned. It was one of the. I don't think you can buy those guitar books too much anymore with all kinds of top 40 hits in them because of copyright laws are so much stricter now. But this had a bunch of like Love Grows Where My Rosemary Goes, and I think Time in a Bottle was in there, and it would have the guitar chords written up. It was kind of written for guitar students. But one of the songs in there was that old song they call the Wind Mariah, which was actually in a movie with Paint Your Wagon, and Clint Eastwood sang it, believe it or not. But that was in there, and I was kind of like that little sister of my friends I was talking about. I picked that one out of the book because it had a G chord in it for quite some time. So away out there, you got a name for rain and wind and fire. That was all G. The rain is test, the fire's Joe. And I played that. That was the first thing I ever played because I got so I could play that. The rain is test, the fire Joe. And then when it changed to the C chord, I could never do it. but but it was long. There was enough of a melody line on the G chord that I got pretty good at that. But then when the C chord came, I kept working on that C chord. But then things that seem so hard once upon a time, one day they're easy. And I think that's a lesson there. And I sometimes think our society doesn't have patience sometimes for people to learn that way. That's how we learn. And there are always going to be things that are hard for us to do. And there probably always are going to be things that maybe we can't do, even with the best of intentions. I'm pretty sure I can't be on the Olympics, especially now. But, we all have our human limitations. But there are things that are hard at first, but when you learn them, they're easy. But it's an evolutionary process, I think, sometimes. And I just think how I played that F chord all those years. I won't even say wrong, but I played it in a way that was actually harder. But to me, at the time, it was easier. There's a Tangled Life's lesson there somewhere. I was playing a harder version of the F chord because to me, it was actually easier. But then when I finally learned to play the F chord in the normal way, it was easier. What had once been harder was actually easier. I'm trying to think of a philosophy that goes along with that, but it seems sort of profound. So the final thing I wanted to say is you've got to love it. I always think of the word amateur, and I think sometimes we cut down the word amateur. But the word amateur comes from the word love, like amorous, or amor in the Romance languages. And an amateur is someone who loves it. And it's hard to get really good at something if you don't love it. And all the great players, the players that have made gazillions of dollars, they didn't get that good and that successful just by raw ambition, and sort of trying to find something that they could get rich at. Their love of music came first, and I'm sure that's true in sports. But definitely there are incentives. If you realize you're good at something, you can. The realization that I can make some money at this is an incentive to push even harder. But it's hard for me to imagine someone just getting really good at something without a love of the instrument, because you've got to love it and have devotion to it, and just having a sort of discipline or schedule as though it were like taking out the trash or something, that you'll never really get good at that. Excellence comes from love. If you love it, I don't even see how you could play that well without feeling. If you didn't love music and love the instrument, I could be wrong. I think there are people that are very professional and see it in almost a kind of detached way as doing their job. But it's hard for me to imagine anyone really being excellent in music in any way who didn't love music, because the soul comes out when you play music. So I kind of want to finish with that. You've got to love it. And of course, a lot of us do love music, although I actually know people in my life that I think don't love music. I think there are people that don't like music, that actually don't like it. I've over the years, I've met people that almost kind of resent it or something, like the Baroness in The Sound of Music. Remember when the Von Trapp were so charming and wonderful and singing, and the Baroness, I should have brought my harmonica. I've known a lot of people like that, and they have no talent. And if it doesn't involve some sort of status or money, or they don't get it, and basically they have no talent. I've also known people who love music and have no talent, kind of like Barney Fife. He loved music so much, and he had a tin ear, and they had to like find a way to sneak him out of the choir because he sang so off key, but he loved music. I've actually known quite a few people like that. But it's hard for me to imagine being really good at music if you don't love it. Don't ever do dumb things, everybody. But if you have a talent in music, you have one life, you should develop your talent. I believe that's another parable Christ taught. We had the parable of the sower and the seeds, which I think is applicable here. Another one is the parable of the talents. If you have talents, it's not just a good idea to. I actually think it's part of our life's living life in a meaningful and full way, and making the most out of what we have to develop our talents. That doesn't mean you have to, sell everything or do dumb things, but develop your talents, and do it out of love. And you'll if you love music, and you'll be a better player. It's hard for me to imagine anyone ever playing music well that didn't love it. I don't see how it would be possible. Like, just kind of learning it because it was an exercise, and they thought they could make some money at it, or they thought they could impress girls or guys, whatever the case may be. You can't really get good at something. There are plenty of people. I grew up, there were plenty of people that wanted to play guitar because they thought girls would like it, or it was kind of cool. That was back in the 70s. But if you don't love the instrument and have talent, it's hard for me to see how you could ever really play that well. Well, I just wanted to share those thoughts. I hope you are doing well. Thanks for the many people that commented in the comments last week and expressed their condolences upon the passing of my mom. Really appreciated your kind thoughts and prayers. And also, I hope you'll consider watching Original Song Thursday. If you only watch a few of my videos, I'm gonna keep doing gear reviews sometimes, but I'm gonna focus more on some of my original songs, and that to me is important, and making some comments about my take on music, and still reviewing some albums. I think that's always good. Well, everybody, thanks. Take care.